Hello and welcome to Philosophy Vibe, the channel where we discuss and debate different philosophical ideas. Today we're going to be looking into an argumentation form and method used in philosophical discourse known as Reductio Ad Absurdum. Interesting. So, Reductio Ad Absurdum is a Latin phrase meaning reduction to absurdity, and essentially this is exactly what the style of argument does. In a debate, when one adopts a reductio ad absurdum method, they are showing that if their opponent's argument is followed through to the logical end, it will result in some sort of absurdity. Likewise, this method can also be used to highlight the strengths of one's own argument, because if the opposite of one's own argument is followed through to the logical end, this too will result in some sort of absurdity. Now, when we say absurdity, we can mean literal, ridiculous or bizarre conclusions, as well as a complete contradiction in the conclusion, or even something morally unacceptable or reprehensible. I see. So that's Reductio Ad Absurdum in a nutshell. It is reducing your opponent's argument to the absurd by pushing the premises and conclusions to their logical limits, or likewise, strengthening your own argument by showing the opposite push to its logical limits will also result in an absurdity. So let's look at some examples. We'll start off with a Reductio Ad Absurdum where the conclusion is just ridiculous. Let's consider the gardener who has developed a beautiful garden filled with trees and flowers and plants. As he desperately wants to maintain the beauty of his garden, he is worried about animals eating his plants, and so he argues, if I want to maintain the beauty of the garden, no living things are allowed in the garden. This seems reasonable. However, using Reductio Ad Absurdum, if we follow this to the logical end, we can argue that plants are in fact living things, and so for his argument to stand, he must rip out all the plants in his garden. And so, in order to protect his plants and flowers in the garden, he must rip out and throw away all the plants and flowers in his garden. An absurd conclusion to the argument. Continuing with the ridiculous conclusions, imagine a mother and child at a sweet shop. Whilst looking around, the child takes a sweet and puts it in her pocket. The mother notices this and tells the child to put it back as this is technically stealing. The child, however, argues that this is only one sweet, something that will not be missed by the shop owners, and so the child argues that it is permissible to steal only one thing. The mother, using Reductio Ad Absurdum, argues that if this is to be followed to the logical end, then every person will be entitled to steal one sweet. If every person who comes into the store stole just one sweet, eventually all the sweets in the store will be gone and the store owner will be forced to close down and there will be no more sweet shop left. Even though it is only one sweet stolen, the logical end is the complete closure of the sweet shop, an absurd conclusion to the argument. Let's consider using Reductio Ad Absurdum to strengthen one's own argument by focusing on a contradictory conclusion of the opposite argument. Let's say someone wants to argue that the Earth is more than 10,000 years old. They will in fact start with the opposite conclusion as the first premise. So, the Earth is just 10,000 years old. If the Earth is just 10,000 years old, then there would be nothing on Earth that is older than 10,000 years. There are in fact fossils that are older than 10,000 years. It then follows that the Earth is just 10,000 years old and also older than 10,000 years. This is then an absurd conclusion, as it is a contradiction. Therefore, using Reductio Ad Absurdum, we strengthen our own argument that the Earth is older than 10,000 years. So there we have the examples of Reductio Ad Absurdum and how it is used in arguments. Great examples and a great method of argument. However, it is important to bring up that one needs to be careful when using a Reductio Ad Absurdum. If it is used incorrectly, it can actually result in a fallacy within your argument. Really? Yes. There are two fallacies that often arise in debates that are both similar to Reductio Ad Absurdum, and so you must be careful not to accidentally use these fallacies when trying a Reductio argument. So what are the fallacies? The first is a straw man fallacy. This is when one exaggerates or distorts their opponent's argument and then begins arguing against this distorted or exaggerated version. This is a complete fallacy, as you are not arguing against the original argument, but you are arguing against a distorted version that you have made up. This happens very often. So, when you think you are reducing one's argument to the absurd, be careful you are not falling into a straw man fallacy. Here is an example. I think the nation should consider reducing their consumption of red meat. I completely disagree. Millions of people enjoy eating meat every day. To just start banning people from eating meat and pushing the nation into veganism is unfair and unpopular. Notice here, this is not a reductio ad absurdum. The argument was for the nation to reduce the consumption of red meat, but this was distorted to seem like the argument was in favour of banning all meat. This was not the logical end of the argument, but an exaggerated version, and so it is not reductio ad absurdum, but it becomes a straw man fallacy. Yes, I see. The second fallacy that can be similar to reductio ad absurdum is the slippery slope fallacy. This is when one takes an argument and automatically adopts the hypothetical extreme consequences of the argument as the original argument. Here is an example. I think we should consider reducing the legal drinking age of alcohol. No, that is wrong. If you start reducing the drinking age, then before you know it, you will have 5-year-olds getting drunk in bars. Again, this is not a reductio ad absurdum. The logical limit of lowering the drinking age is not necessarily 5-year-olds drinking in a bar. This is a slippery slope fallacy, as lowering the drinking age could mean by a year or two, not by 13 years. This is a hypothetical extreme that the original argument's consequence will not necessarily lead to, and so it becomes a slippery slope fallacy. Yes, this makes sense. Reductio ad absurdum is a great argumentation method, but we must be careful not to commit logical fallacies. Indeed. If you enjoy these types of philosophical discussions and you want to help support the channel, then please check out the Philosophy Vibe paperback anthology book set. This is a compilation of our scripts put into 3 fascinating volumes: Philosophy of Religion, Metaphysics, and Ethics and Political Philosophy, a really interesting read. All volumes are available on Amazon, and thank you to everyone who has purchased our books so far. We really appreciate it. But that's all the time we have for now. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the vibe. And what does everyone else think? Let us know some great reductio ad absurdum arguments you have used in your debates. Don't forget to like and share, and for more philosophical debates and discussions, please subscribe to the channel. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye bye.